Texas killing field are a place where horror hides in plain sight. Imagine driving down a long Texas highway. On a warm, sunny day, you see wide, open land. Tall grass dances in the wind. Marshes glimmer under the sun. From your car window, it looks peaceful. But beneath that beauty lies one of the darkest mysteries in America. This ground has been a dumping place for killers. It has hidden the bodies of dozens of girls and women for over 50 years. Many of them were found. Many others have never been seen again. This deadly stretch of land sits between Houston and Galveston along Interstate 45, one of the busiest highways in Texas. For roughly 50 miles, the road cuts through an ever-changing landscape. Wide open fields that stretch to the horizon, patches of scrubby forest, abandoned lots, and clusters of oil pumps slowly dipping in and out of the earth. Some areas are dotted with small towns and gas stations, while others feel like they've been forgotten by time. Here, the wind carries the smell of salt from the Gulf of Mexico, mixed with the heavy scent of oil and marsh water. To the thousands of drivers who pass through every day, I-45 is simply a route between two cities. But to investigators and locals who know its dark history, this is more than just a road. It is a hunting ground. Since the early 1970s, police believe at least 30 young women have vanished somewhere along this corridor. Some were later found in shallow graves, their identities confirmed after weeks, months, or even decades. Others remain nameless, their remains labeled only as Jane Doe in cold case files. The terrain here makes it an ideal place to hide dark deeds. The ground along Interstate 45 is often damp and unstable. In many spots, the soil is so soft it can swallow footprints within hours, erasing signs that anyone ever walked there. Heavy rains turn low areas into pools of stagnant water, and the ditches fill quickly, masking any evidence that might have been left behind. In summer, the heat can be suffocating, and the air buzzes with insects. In winter, a wet chill hangs in the air, seeping into your skin. Tall grass and thick weeds often grow higher than a person's head, creating a living wall that hides whatever lies behind it. Back in the 1970s, this part of Texas had another problem beyond its lonely roads and dark fields. Police departments didn't share information easily. If a girl went missing in one town, the officers in the next town might never hear about it. There were no central databases, no quick emails, no Amber Alerts flashing across TV screens. Everything was done with phone calls, paper reports, and word of mouth. Missing person cases could slip through the cracks, especially if the victim was labeled a runaway or hitchhiker. In that era, law enforcement sometimes assumed teens left home by choice, and urgent searches weren't always launched. This left dangerous gaps that predators could exploit. The area was a busy crossroads. Every day, strangers passed through, truck drivers making deliveries, oil workers traveling between rigs, tourists heading to Galveston's beaches. Some stopped for gas or food, others just kept driving. It was easy for a predator to blend in, and just as easy to leave without anyone noticing. The first known victim tied to this region was 13-year-old Colette Wilson. It was a warm day in June 1971 when Colette finished her band practice. Her teacher dropped her off at a familiar highway intersection where her mother was supposed to meet her. But that meeting never happened. Hours turned into days. Her family printed flyers, knocked on doors, and called anyone who might have seen her. Weeks later, the search ended with heartbreak. Colette's body was found in a river far from where she was last seen. Only a few months after Khalid's disappearance, tragedy struck again. 14-year-old Rhonda Johnson and 13-year-old Sharon Shaw were best friends, inseparable and full of life. One sunny day, they went to the beach in Galveston, laughing and walking along the shore. When evening came, their families expected to see them home for dinner. They never arrived. Search efforts dragged on for months until their remains were discovered in a marsh. The joyful memories of that beach day became forever linked with loss. As the 1970s went on, the list of missing girls grew. Debbie Ackerman and Maria Johnson, both 15, were last seen hitchhiking, a common way for teens to get around at the time. They climbed into a vehicle and vanished. Days later, their bodies were pulled from the water. The sense of safety that once surrounded simple teenage adventures was slipping away. In 1974, 12-year-old Brooks Bracewell and 14-year-old Georgia Gear disappeared while walking home from school. It was a short route they had taken many times before. This time, they never made it back. Weeks passed before their bodies were found in a wooded area. The news sent another wave of fear through the community. Each new disappearance added to the tension. Parents warned their children about strangers. Teenagers who once felt free to roam now looked over their shoulders, and yet, without clear connections between jurisdictions, the crimes remained scattered in official records, just individual tragedies, not a pattern. But in the hearts of the locals, people began to whisper that something sinister was happening along the roads of southeast Texas. At first, police did not see a clear link between the disappearances. Different towns had their own officers, their own cases, and their own files. The crimes were scattered across multiple counties, each with its own priorities. Without a central system to compare notes, one department's missing girl was just another name on a local bulletin board, not part of a larger chain of tragedies. But the people who lived along Interstate 45 started to notice something that the official reports didn't show. The victims were young girls, many in their teens, and they were disappearing from the same general area. The stories were eerily similar: a walk to the store, a day at the beach, a short trip home from school, and then nothing. Their bodies, when found, often turned up in remote fields, marshes, or bodies of water not far from the highway. By the early 1980s, the fear in the community had a name: the Highway of Death. Parents warned their daughters to stay close to home, to never walk alone, and to avoid hitchhiking at all costs. People avoided isolated back roads after dark. But even with the fear spreading, the disappearances continued, and the killer or killers remained free. Between 1983 and 1991, one location became the center of the Texas killing fields mystery: a 25-acre patch of land near Calder Road in League City. Once used for oil operations, the land had been left abandoned, its pumps silent, the weeds reclaiming the space. To most passers-by, it was just another forgotten field, empty, quiet, and unremarkable. But to those who would later investigate it, this ground was hiding unspeakable horrors. The first tragedy, linked to Calder Road, came in April 1984. 23-year-old Heidi Fye, a waitress known for her friendly smile and outgoing personality, vanished. Friends and family searched, holding on to hope that she might still be alive. Months later, that hope was shattered when her remains were found in the field. The community was shocked, but few could imagine that this was only the beginning. 2 years later, in September 1986, the field revealed more of its grim secrets. searchers stumbled upon the skeletal remains of two women. One was quickly identified as 16-year-old Laura Miller. Laura had moved to League City with her family just a year earlier. On the day she disappeared, Laura had walked to a nearby store to use a payphone after the one in her home stopped working. It was a short walk she had made before, but this time she never returned. Her father, Tim Miller, would later become one of the most determined voices in the fight to solve the Killing Fields cases. The second woman found that day in 1986 was harder to identify. Without modern forensic tools, she became known only as Jane Doe. For more than 3 decades, her identity remained a mystery, her life story unknown. Finally, in 2019, advances in DNA testing and genetic genealogy revealed her name, Audrey Lee Cook. Audrey had been in her early 30s and living in Houston at the time of her disappearance. She was remembered as a kind woman. The final known discovery at Calder Road came in 1991. Another set of remains was found, belonging to a woman who would be called Janet Doe for nearly 30 years. In 2019, she was identified as 34-year-old Donna Gonsulin Prudhomme. Donna had been a mother, a friend, and a person who had faced struggles but still had people who loved her deeply. 4 women, Heidi, Laura, Audrey, and Donna, were all found within walking distance of each other in the same field. The proximity of their final resting places has fueled endless speculation. Was this the work of a single serial killer returning to a familiar dumping ground? Or had the location become a dark secret shared by multiple predators who knew it was a place where bodies could vanish into the landscape? Decades later, police still cannot say for certain. What is clear is that this patch of land holds the key to some of the most haunting unsolved murders in Texas history. After Laura Miller's body was discovered in the Calder Road field in 1986, her father, Tim Miller, was consumed by grief and a deep need for justice. The unanswered questions haunted him. Who had taken his daughter? Why had she been left there? And would the person ever be caught? In 2000, he founded Texas EquuSearch, a volunteer search and rescue organization dedicated to finding missing persons. What began as a small group of volunteers on horseback quickly grew into one of the most recognized search organizations in the country. They now deploy horses, ATVs, boats, drones, and foot teams to assist in searches across the United States and beyond. Over the years, several suspects have been linked to the Texas killing fields, though none have been proven responsible for all the murders. One of the most prominent names is Clyde Hedrick, a man with a criminal past. He was convicted in 2014 of involuntary manslaughter for the 1984 death of Ellen Beeson, whose body was found in a field. Some investigators suspect Hedrick's involvement in the Calder Road murders, but there has never been enough evidence to charge him. Hedrick denies any connection to those cases, but his history and proximity keep him under suspicion. Edward Harold Bell, a convicted sex offender, also became a person of interest after claiming in letters and interviews that he had killed 11 girls in the 1970s, referring to them as the 11 who went to heaven. Some of his statements seemed to match details of certain cases, but his credibility was shaky. Investigators could not corroborate his confessions, and many believe Bell may have been seeking attention or exaggerating his crimes. Bell died in 2019, his claims unresolved. Robert Abel, a former NASA engineer, owned property near the Calder Road field. He was cooperative with police and allowed searches of his land, but suspicions lingered due to his proximity to the crime scenes and certain remarks he made. No conclusive evidence ever tied him to the murders, and those who knew him insist he was wrongly targeted. Abel maintained his innocence until his death. The truth about the Texas killing fields may be that there was never just one killer. The area's geography, its isolation, and decades of transient movement created an environment where multiple predators could operate undetected. Each could have taken advantage of the same remote dumping grounds. The danger along Interstate 45 did not end with the Calder Road murders of the 1980s and early 1990s. In 1997, a new predator emerged, William Lewis Reese. Reese was no stranger to law enforcement. He already had a history of violent behavior and sexual assaults. But in the spring and summer of 1997, he began a deadly spree that would claim the lives of at least 3 young women in Texas and 1 in Oklahoma. His first known Texas victim was 12-year-old Laura Smither from Friendswood. On April 3, 1997, Laura went out for a morning jog near her home and never returned. For 17 days, her disappearance gripped the community in fear and sorrow until her body was discovered in a retention pond miles away. Only months later, 17-year-old Jessica Kane vanished after leaving a dinner with friends in Lamarck. Her truck was found abandoned on the shoulder of I-45, but Jessica was gone. Around the same time, 20-year-old Kellyanne Cox disappeared from Denton after visiting a prison on a school trip. Reese was later tied to another murder in Oklahoma, that of Tiffany Johnston, a 19-year-old who vanished from a car wash in Bethany in July 1997. Johnston's case would become the key to unraveling his crimes. Years later, facing the death penalty in Oklahoma, Reese began cooperating with authorities. In chilling detail, he confessed to multiple murders and led investigators to the burial sites of Jessica Kane and Kellyanne Cox. Reese was sentenced to death in Oklahoma and received a life sentence in Texas. His crimes proved that the I-45 corridor remained a dangerous hunting ground long after the first bodies were found. Today, the Texas killing fields are known far beyond the borders of Texas. Documentaries, books, podcasts, and news reports have carried the story around the world. To outsiders, it may be a haunting true crime tale, but for the people who live nearby, it is not entertainment. It is a deep, unhealed wound that runs through generations. Parents still warn their children not to walk alone. Some residents avoid certain exits entirely, uneasy even in daylight. The shadow of the fields stretches far into everyday life. The 25-acre patch near Calder Road sits quiet now. The oil operations are long gone. Grass and weeds have grown over the places where bodies were found. On sunny afternoons, cars rush past without a glance, their drivers unaware of the history they are passing. But for those who know, the silence here is heavy. The ground feels like it holds its breath. It remembers every name, every face, every final moment that was never heard or seen by the world. The Texas killing fields are a grim reminder that evil can hide anywhere, even in places that seem wide open and harmless. They show us how quickly a case can grow cold and how long families can wait for answers. But they also prove that hope can return, even decades later, through persistence, science, and the refusal to forget. If you know anything, no matter how small, contact the Galveston County Sheriff's Office or Texas EquuSearch. Your information could be the missing piece. After 50 years of grief and questions, These families deserve the truth, and the fields at long last deserve peace.